Everybody, you know what time it is. It's Monday night. It's time for Disputed Lands Take on the World TV. Tonight we have a special guest, and we're going to get to him shortly. It's such a privilege to have this guy on. But first, we have Ian, the Almighty's Duck, Fiaducci. What you guys don't know is that this year at Take on the World 19, someone actually got lost in Ian's beard. Next year, we've already been praying about it. We're going to see if we can't put a team together to go in there and rescue this guy. He's hanging out with Ian and his beard. We're praying about it. We're going to be ready. So Take on the World 20. We're sending in a team to get this guy from Ian's beard. But tonight we have special guest Jim Wilhelmsen. Now I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up here. I'm going to just read his bio for you guys. I knew he had a bio, and it's on the Facebook page, so you guys can read it. But I know some of you guys just go out there and listen to it. So I'm going to read you this man's bio, and I'm going to tell you how I came across him after that, and then we'll talk to him directly. So Jim has been an ordained minister for over 4 decades, an alumni from Central Bible College. He pioneered one of the first Christian motorcycle ministries in the early 70s. I'm a Harley rider. And one of the first Christian ministry to understand Genesis 6 paradigm. And my phone closed. So now, why did it close? I got to get it back. That's because it's live. That's why. Sorry, guys. In the early 70s, oh my gosh. Okay, I guess it doesn't want me to read this. Jim, as you already know, this happens quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
When people are trying to talk to you. But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to go this way. For those of you who don't know, Jim always has interference. People on the spiritual side of things, entities, really just do not like the information getting out that he likes to share. And this always happens with him. His first sermon on the subject, he was one of the first guys out there to understand the Genesis 6 paradigm, giving his first sermon on the subject in 1979. I was born in 73. I was only 6 years old. In 96, Jim was called to investigate and evangelize the entire subject of UFOs and aliens on a full-time basis. He traveled across the U.S. investigating sightings and attending UFO conventions as a vendor, minister in MUFON, Mutual UFO Network researcher. This led him to become a full-time resident of Roswell, New Mexico, opening up a Bible-based bookstore museum across the street from the International UFO Museum. Jim was one of the first clergy to offer biblical-based counseling and termination of alien abduction and its victims. And this transition was based on over 20 years of experience in counseling, inner healing, and deliverance in the Brightmoor section of Detroit. As a child, Jim was a victim of an alien abduction experience himself, which has probably had a lot to do with setting him on the path that it did. And as a young man, Jim was a member of the local Detroit Motorcycle Club. Jim was also a Vietnam-era veteran serving in the Defense Missile Unit as part of the Delta Force. Jim has returned to Detroit today, where he continues to work with the homeless at Peacemakers International, teaching work skills and providing biblical-based counseling. He is also on the eve of opening another museum, which we're going to talk about at the latter part of this interview tonight, in Detroit as the culmination of the 25 years of dealing with the paranormal and supernatural. Jim has 2 sons, Jason and David, a daughter, Rebecca, and with 9 grandchildren, all local to Michigan. With that, I catch my breath and I say, Jim, welcome to Disputed Lands, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Jim, I came to find out about your work years before I heard of your first interview. I was telling you before we came on the show that I ran across David Flynn's work. It was among that work, of course, that I couldn't help but run into information regarding a guy doing what most Christians, even today, would have considered someone to keep an eye on. But you have understood since 1979, this Genesis 6 paradigm, and you ended up in Roswell, New Mexico at, what was the name of that conference again?
The Ancient of Days conference.
Ancient of Days conference. If any of you guys ever to go look for videos on David Flynn giving his presentations, that was where that is that conference. Jim was there, friends. So, Jim, you have quite a bit. There's not really much that we could delve into there without being caught on that for the rest of our hour. So, if you were to sum up this history that I gave you in leading you to New Mexico, to Roswell, what was going on, man? What was going on in your heart to lead you there? We want to know the kind of person that Jim is. How does a guy follow the Spirit so precisely to end up in that location? I mean, it's amazing to me.
Well, up until I went to and moved and made the move to Roswell, New Mexico, a lot of what I had was through fasting, praying, searching the scriptures, my own education in hermeneutics, just unique combinations of people who had helped be a mentor. I've had a rabbinical student that graduated from Israel that taught me Pardis, which is something that's not even taught in the Western world. And yet I think every academic institution should be teaching Pardis. This is the way the Jewish mind wrote the Bible, in a four-layered process. So being that they did this, it's important for us to be able to get in their heads and understand the richness of the scriptures, how so much can come from one scripture. Understanding Pardis is a whole opening up of the scriptures in a much more detailed way. So actually, when I look back at my whole life, God has been setting me up to be in the right place at the right time. And for that particular time in 2003, what Roswell, New Mexico afforded me was to take all of this information I had out of just theory and idea and put it on the front lines of seeing, can this produce fruit? Is this really, Lord, if this is what you have been telling me, I'm expecting that people are going to come to you. Their relationship, if they already have one with you, is going to be enhanced and made stronger and better. Other people that don't know you are going to come to know you. This is the testing grounds to move to Roswell. So for me, it was an opportunity to see reality, to the litmus test. Is this going to produce what I think it's going to produce? And it more than produced it. It launched off a career that has taken me, 4 decades. But I would have to say that my willingness to go to Roswell, give up, literally cut all of the ties that I had in Detroit. I mean, I went there not knowing anyone, not having any job opportunity, not doing anything. My wife at the time had a career job that she was willing to let go completely. We came there and had to literally start all over again. And the Lord just continued to bless. And it's just, I can't even begin to tell you how fruitful, how much of an opportunity it was. People were going into the International UFO Museum. And I was there at a perfect time when some of the some of the original people that were there during the 1947 Roswell crash were on their last breath. I got to meet them, know them. One became a dear friend of mine. And my wife actually worked in the senior citizen home that he was, living in. Before he passed, sometimes he would be cognitive, sometimes he would be, just out of it. But the times that he were cognitive were really interesting. Now he was Lieutenant Haut, H-A-U-T was his name. He was liaison officer that first proclaimed on a live broadcast that they had captured the remains of a UFO. He's the one that kind of was the interim guy that relayed that to the public from what he was getting from Marcel himself. So he was quite the insider as far as what really went on and what was going on and everything. And I got to have some interesting discussions with him. Now, he was actually, I believe, had faith in God and didn't know really where to reference any of it, but he did have, when he helped pioneer and open up the International UFO Museum, at that time, all different points of views were allowed in the museum. So, I mean, there was some Christian biblical perspective work there. There was conspiracy stuff. There was just a little bit of everything from every element. And it was like, you know, come in, view the museum, you make the final decision. When he passed away, his daughter had a very narrow parameter. The aliens are friendly. We need to encourage this, you know, promotion of the ancient aliens, you know, agenda. So almost overnight, she kicked out everything that conflicted with that. She actually saw MUFON as competition with her agenda. So she quit allowing them to have meetings over there. She literally almost strangled the whole annual celebrations or holidays or whatever you would call it. Because every 4th of July, they would have, you know, kind of reenactments and people from all over the world would come in to celebrate this one day of what actually happened in 1947. Well, she put such a stranglehold on it, wanting her representation. Aliens are friendly. They're here to help us out and whatever. And so she wouldn't have anything else. So that was a transitional change. Fortunately, I was there during that time of change, so that when people now were going into the International UFO Museum, they're coming out scratching their heads going, wow, maybe aliens did create us. Maybe this is, you know, they were buying into it because of the way everything was presented now in the museum. It was an indoctrination into that thought. So me being right across the street, they'd look up across the street and look over at my place. And I had a big Nazi UFO up on top of my, it was made out of an 8-foot double dish satellite dish. And then down below, I had 2 posts. One had, in Hebrew, it had the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord God, the Lord is one. And on the other side, in Greek, I had Jesus Christ, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Well, it looked like alien writing from across the street. But for every Jew that ever went into that place, they're coming out and they're seeing a Nazi UFO on top. They're seeing the Shema in Hebrew. They go, okay, we got to go in there and check this out. What in the heck is going on here? So, you know, it looked kooky. It looked crazy. But it worked.
If people want to see that, all they need to do is actually follow the link to Jim's Facebook page. And right now he has that picture as his profile picture. You can actually see the storefront that he's talking about there in Roswell. I'm going to back up actually a second here. You're Genesis 6 and the understanding what most of us in this community have today of the giants and the angels that came down and took women as they pleased. That really set you against. I mean, in 79, that is not the understanding every other evangelistic Protestant church had. I mean, they still all pretty much held to the Sethite theory. How hard or difficult was that to hold that view with so much opposition?
You know, the thing is that I had a good reputation in Detroit as being a very balanced. Now, when I first came on a scene with the Christian motorcycle ministry, I was only one major pastor in Detroit who happened to be well loved by everyone. He was the only one that would listen or even consider the possibilities of a Christian, evangelical Christian motorcycle club as being real. I was fortunate enough that he was my mentor. He was a real assistant and aid, but it was because of his association that I was able to acclimate the rest of Detroit into realizing that this was going to be a fruitful ministry. I had so many people getting saved through our ministry that we were starting to send them out to other churches that we knew were good churches where they could get grounded. And so these churches want to know, who in the heck, what are these King's Kids things? What's this all about? I had one group actually come and sort of infiltrate, you might say, the meetings to see, you know, what was going on firsthand. And I didn't take offense to it. I thought it was kind of cool that, you know, they were checking it out. I had nothing to hide. And they went back and reported to their elders of this church. And this is a very large church. They said, you wouldn't believe this guy. This guy is teaching bikers college level theology. And what's most incredible, they're understanding it. They're getting it. And yeah, that was my ministry. That was my job. And so it invariably in a couple of years, the 700 Club came and did a documentary on us, and it ended up being only like a 2-minute documentary, but we were on the program, and from that I helped set up similar ministries all over the country. And what I did is I didn't want to be like the main control or anything. I set up a package with bylaws and constitution, and I said, here, you tailor fit this for your area, because you know best how to evangelize and reach the people, because every city has a different culture, a different standard and way, a means of communication. So I just gave them a starter kit, and then they'd take off and go from there. So long story short, the next thing you know, Christian biking becomes a mainstream thing, so now, thousands of people have come out of the gangs and come out of the things and given new hope and opportunity to be a biker for Christ. So, it's kind of neat that I helped pioneer that. But from that, I had a good reputation until I start talking about Genesis 6. Oh my gosh. That Wilhelmsen guy, he went from aliens and saucers to, he went from Harley choppers to aliens and saucers. This guy's lost it, man. He's turned into a new age goofball. And it was very hurtful. It was heart-rending. It actually was. I put up with a lot of stuff. I was the David Icke of Christianity, the guy that was way out there. And for a short time, I lost all credibility from a lot of people, and it hurt. These were people that were my friends, colleagues, that knew me for years. But I persisted. I didn't push. One thing that the Lord told me when I was fasting and praying and understanding a lot of these things in 1996, he said, Jim, what I'm going to show you, you will have to stand alone for a while, but I want you to stand in confidence. Don't push it on anyone. Don't debate it, and don't push it, don't debate it, and don't defend it. Just tell anybody that's willing to listen, and those that aren't, just let it go. And so I've always kept that way, with it. It's almost like, here's a possible scenario. If I'm right, and if this happens, then this is where you can have a firm foundation based on the word of God. If I'm wrong, I haven't told you to go, sell me your firstborn. I'm not trying to sell you tinfoil hats to protect your mind from the enemy or whatever. All it cost you was a couple of hours of maybe wasting your time. But I haven't asked you to even believe me. Don't. Put it in the back of your mind. If you need it, it's there. If you don't need it, no harm done. Now, somebody once said, oh, isn't that slick? You're trying to get yourself off the hook. You better believe I'm getting myself off the hook. I don't want to be responsible for telling you this is God told me and you got to listen to me. No, if God really told me, you don't have to listen to me. It's going to come to pass, and he's got my back. I don't have to worry about it. So it gave me a sense of confidence, a sense of freedom, that the burden isn't on, I didn't die on a cross for anybody. I don't have to hard sell this to you, or, your blood's on my hands. It's not. I'm off the hook. I'm just providing you with an alternative way of looking at things, not pressuring you to do anything. My confidence is in God. If this is real, it will come to pass. And you know what, guys, I wrote my book 24 years ago. 24 years ago, the topics I was talking about, a hollow earth, space-time, the end times actually being the end of linear time as we know it. And my understanding of quantum physics back then was absolutely zero. I didn't know anything about quantum physics. Now I know probably more than I need to know about it,
or would want to know.
Or want to. Yes, there's many bunny trails that in research. I know way too much about stuff that I don't need to know this, but I do.
So, how in the world did that information get you to Roswell, involved with the MUFON, understanding before many of us were out of our parents' houses, that this was just really a refabricated story of the old story in the scripture, that it was just a new set of clothes on an old story? How did you make that connection? Or was there somebody with you that was bouncing these things off of? Or, to me, it's just mind-boggling when someone's a pioneer of information in today's age, which we know that there's nothing new under the sun. So that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
How did you come to that understanding? And how did you get to Roswell? to open up this museum, which is going to be the segue we need to go where you are now here in the last half of the show and things like that. But I'm kind of giddy. I'm kind of fanboy here. I'm talking to Jim Wilhelmsen. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm jumping around. And then, Ian, if you have any questions, you'll have to cut me off like I told you.
I think the thing is having respect for everyone is a key issue to all of this. We're all, within the UFO community, I don't look at them as, oh, you're the enemy because you believe different than I do. I didn't do that. As a matter of fact, some of their work is what got me out from behind a pew and to start searching some of these mysteries, because I realize, that there's an element of what they see that I need to know and I need to learn. So Stanton Friedman, wonderful guy. I really like the guy. There's a lot of people in the UFO community that are truly trying to find answers to questions that they have because they see an element of truth. They may have a wrong premise and a wrong conclusion, but the raw data is still valid information that I should not have to be afraid of to look at and understand and see it from a godly perspective. Now, so my confidence comes in knowing not about God, but knowing him intimately, knowing his mind. I think that's so many times where if we end up reducing our searching the scriptures as knowing about God and not knowing him intimately, there's a big difference there. But if you know his mind, you know his intent, thoughts, and purposes, that is the safety and the confidence that you can have to delve into a path that maybe not everybody is called to delve into. I've read such horrible garbage. I've read Helena Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine. I don't know if you've ever seen, there are 2 volumes about that
Oh,
thick
yeah.
of the most worst psychobabble in the world. I've read Mein Kampf from the beginning to the end. That was some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I've read Albert Pike's original, not the copy that you can buy on the internet. I mean the one that says on the front cover, if you have this, turn this into your local Mason temple. You're not allowed to have this or whatever. I've got a copy, and guess what, Masons? You're never going to get it.
Right.
It's mine, and I'm keeping it. And so I've read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. You talk about psychobabble, weird stuff. But I think some people have been called to be able to filter through all of that. But it's the ones that can do that because they know their God intimately. And I'm trying to say that I do know my God intimately. Before I got into all of this, I had 20 years of working in the inner city with cross addictions and things that I have seen God set these people free. I have been set free from certain death. Man, going back to the Army when I was in the Delta Force thing, I should have died October 19th, 1970. There's no reason why I'm alive today. That was my first time of realizing, that was my first wake-up call. Why am I still alive? I must have some reason or purpose. I had a hard head, so it took me 4 years to find out that it was Jesus Christ. I wanted to find everything and anything except that guy.
Right.
Not that guy. It got to be something different. Well, it was Jesus was my answer. It took me 4 years to find it, but I had to go through all the isms and schisms, which even that in itself, there was a reason for that. I had to go and see a different side of all of that so that when I got to a point of knowing Jesus, I already had all this other garbage into my background. I knew where that was coming from. And now I could reference that easily into, okay, what part is real and what is the wrong premise and the wrong conclusions. So having respect for others that deal totally differently and see everything differently, like say within the UFO community, a lot of crazy stuff. Half of MUFON members are government agents there for the express purpose of making sure you don't get the truth out and that their system filters everything out.
Right.
It's crazy. So, some people that kind of paranoia could drive them crazy. But the thing is, I realize that God's in control. He's never been out of control. So even though some of this stuff conspiratorial wise looks overwhelming, the technology's against us, the ability to, as my understandings progress and I realize, oh my gosh, we're dealing with an enemy that not only can traverse time and space, but dimension, multiverse. Seriously? That's overwhelming. But you know what? Again, hey, I know the creator of all the physics behind all of that. What do I got to worry about? Nothing. God's in control, always has been in control, always will be in control. So when he says a promise that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, this is the inheritance of them that believe and trust in him. Man, that's for us every day, all the time. When he says that all things can work together for good to them who love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. How can I be fearful? When he again reiterates that in Romans 8, 38, he says, for I am fully persuaded that neither life nor death, nor things to come, nor things to pass, nor principalities or powers, or any other creature can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus. My alter ego guy is Alfred E. Newman. Remember him?
Yeah.
Remember he goes, what, me worry? That's my attitude. I don't have anything to worry about. God is in control. He's got a plan. He's never been late. Nothing's ever blindsided him. Before the foundation of the world, the Lamb of God was slain. That means before he did anything, he already figured out that he was going to personally pay a price to bring back his people. The only thing he told us to do, occupy until I come, overcome as I have overcome. That's actually rather simple. We don't have to do the work ourselves. We can't. We're up against entities that are far superior than us. So on one hand, we have to have the humility to realize, apart from God, I can do nothing. But in Christ, I can do everything. I'm his child. You know, more and more you hear the popular idea that the universe tells us this, the universe tells us that. You know, you see it on anything from commercials anymore, even to everywhere. It's almost like a mantra that's been, programmed into our American psyche.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the thing is, I'm looking at that, I'm going, so I was talking to a Wiccan witch, and she actually has a very kind, tender heart. I know that's hard for some people to, well, Wiccan witch, they're wicked. No, this person thinks they're a light worker. They think they're doing good, a white witch. Yeah, well, okay, whatever. But you know what? Let's talk about this, okay, dear? So you follow the universe. The universe tells you what to do and how to do it. And she says, yeah, basically. And I said, well, why are you settling for the middleman? And she says, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, it's like you're going to the universe, which is just a program that if you can compare it as an analogy of a computer, that's just a program that was written and created by the processor. Why would you not want to go to the processor who created all of this and wrote the program? You're just going to a middleman and you're letting the middleman tell you what to do. I said, I have a relationship with the processor. He's the one that created all of this. He's my creator. And he has a name, and his name is Jesus. And he told Amos, he says, why do you seek the stars instead of the maker of the stars? Now, he didn't say that there wasn't anything encrypted. As a matter of fact, he says there are things encrypted in the stars to determine times and seasons. But why are you going to an astrologer who's going to the universe to find out the answers? My Bible says there's only one mediator between man and God, the man Christ Jesus, the processor. So why not go to him? Because he says if you go to him, you get to tell the universe what it can and cannot do. It's the middleman. I'm a child of God. I tell the universe. It's like Neo in Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get ordered by the universe. We order the universe and tell it what it can or cannot do. We get an idea spoken into our heads. You have fourth stage cancer. You're going to die. Oh, really? Okay, that's what the God of this world says as the first thing based on this world. But what does my word say? My God says I'm healed by his stripes. Well, God, what do you say about it? Personally apply this to me. Am I? Oh, no. You know what? I don't have to accept that, do I? Okay. Hey, universe. No. By his stripes, I've been healed. This is my inheritance as a child of God. You back off and get away. You have no power and authority to ruin my life or take it away. It's God's. And he told me that I don't have to settle for this. So in the name of Jesus, I rebuke that. I'm healed. Now, I have a living testimony that I should have died in 2016 with esophageal cancer. I'm still alive. it's been many years after that. I got healed, but I didn't get healed by an operation or anything. I went to both my pastors, friends. They laid hands on me. I believed at that moment that I was healed. And the Lord told me, he says, I want you to go on Facebook. I want you to announce to everybody to pray for you and tell them that you don't need medical or spiritual or, dietary or spiritual help. God's got all that taken care of. Just pray and stand in the gap for me and ask the Lord to have me healed. That night I woke up. Now, part of this cancer, one of the indications is that, and the way it was detected, is that if you have a present cancer in your body, any sores will not heal. They won't scab over. They stay open. And it's kind of like in a remission because it's showing that there's an active cancer in your body. So that night, the Lord woke me up and says, Jim, even as you hear my voice, I am removing the cancer for your body. You are healed. I thought I was having a dream. I just fell right back asleep. I was in a lot of pain. You acclimate yourself to this pain. You don't realize how bad it gets. And when I woke up in the morning, I looked, and everything that I had was scabbed over. And I'm going, oh my God, that wasn't a dream. That happened. I went on Facebook and I thanked everybody. And I said, you guys pulled through. You prayed and I'm healed. Now I had a CAT scan done because I wanted to make sure, to verify and everything. So I have all the documentation on all of it. And it's incredible. I got healed and it was just like that. But 23 years ago, the Lord told me that this was going to happen. So I knew right away that all of this was going to happen. He says it was to be for his glory. Well, nothing dramatic happened. As a matter of fact, a lot of people even challenged it. Says, well, Jim, it's coincidence. No, it's not coincidence. I know my prayer life. I know what God has done in my life. This was supernatural. I had anticipated this was going to happen. And guess what? It was mainly for me, a faith booster to realize, okay, continue to stand your ground, continue to do what you're doing, and don't waver to the left or the right. Just stay focused and do what you need to do. So
yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted people to hear and see of you. None of us have everything figured out. None of us have all the answers.
Absolutely.
None of us know everything that's going to take place and just how to get it done.
And when they claim that, it's time to run away.
Yeah. But what I wanted the people to see of you who are watching tonight is the Jim that I have come to know through watching and listening to you is someone who has simply walked in faith with this next thing that was put in front of him, unafraid to speak what he'd been given and go where he had been sent. Now, it sounds very simple and easy to say, but anybody thinking about their own life knows just how great of a battle doing those simple things, those simple two things can be. And yet here sits in front of us someone who has got a long track record of doing just that, hearing from the Lord and saying what he's been given and going where he's been sent. How did you get to Roswell? How did you get there? How do you go from biker ministry to Roswell, New Mexico? Other than riding your Harley because you're being chased out of town and that's where you end up,
Well, I had, going all the way back to my childhood, I grew up as a country kid in Livonia. Livonia was a suburb out in the boondocks, basically a country. It was the area that I lived in was part of a auto workers, mostly Ford Motor Company, but it was an auto workers suburb, newly developed for the convenience of ease right after World War II for factory workers to form a community where they could all live in the same area, take the same bus routes or whatever into the, to factories where they worked. And so it was that kind of a community. Yet it was out in the country. I mean, I grew up with dirt roads. Across the street was a creek that we used to build rafts and float down to the golf course, and just have all kinds of crazy country type fun. Now, 3 miles away, just 3 miles away, on the other side of well, it was called 5 Mile on this side of Telegraph. On the other side of Telegraph, it was called Finkel. On the other side of Telegraph was a section called Brightmoor area of Detroit. Brightmoor was the armpit of Detroit ever since it ever existed. And it was, at first, it was considered like let's put it in crude terms, it was a white trash hillbilly neighborhood. And it was very undesirable. They were mostly coal miners working from the Appalachian Mountains, and also factory workers, mostly glass blowers, factory workers, and landowners, farmers from the same mountainous areas in Pennsylvania. Now, they all moved into Detroit to work in the automotive factories and everything back in the Depression era. And this is where that community came to be. Now, because they grew up in sharecropping and other things like that, there wasn't plumbing, there was outhouses. They lived as they did when they lived in the hills of Kentucky, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. So not exactly up to codes or standards that most cities were used to. So it was an area that was considered deprived, embarrassing, forsaken. And my grandparents lived there. They were only like 3 miles down the road. Now, I lived half of my life being babysat by my grandparents, as well as living in the country. So as it developed, it ended up being, it went over to changes in the 80s when I was pastoring the King's Kids. We were in Brightmoor. It's where my family grew up. It's where I had roots. It just seemed to be the area to be. And it actually basically became a biker. There was 3 or 4 clubs just up and down the little stretch of a 2-mile area in the downtown Brightmoor area. So this naturally seemed to be the best place to put a Christian bike ministry. So we were there most of the time of our history was living in that area. I had the unique experience of being experienced as a country kid and also knowing the hood and what the hood was like. So later on, this neighborhood ended up becoming the most dangerous. The people that moved in when we had the white flight after the '67 riots were mainly drug gangs taking opportunity and exploiting the situation, in Detroit. So it went over to being controlled by the drug gangs, or the bike clubs kind of kept the drug gangs in control. It says, look, we got business activities going on here too. We don't want your punk stuff going on here. You take care of, you don't mess with us. We're not going to mess with you. We can help with each other. So they did kind of work together in a strange, bizarre way. So it changed over to a different outer wrapping, but it was still the hood. It was once declared when the drug gangs took over that it was one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in all of Detroit, and it still has that reputation now. Although now it's gone back to country, and now Livonia has turned into city, so it's kind of a full cycle reversal kind of situation going on. But because of that uniqueness, my heart has always been to get this message to the people that are rejected and don't get it. I mean, this whole Genesis 6 paradigm of the deception, the end time deception, and how this alien thing is going to be played out, everybody in this planet needs to know. Who's going into the hood and sharing this news with them? Not very many people. This is where my passion is. This is where I've been created to fit into that little niche. That's what I like being, as a gap filler. That's what brought me into the interest of the biking. Nobody's ever evangelized this community before. You know what? This is an area I can fill in. This is something I know about. So I pioneered the first bike ministry. Now jumping from that into the UFO alien thing, you know what? I've experienced these things on different levels. My experience working in the bike ministry, now I can take this, and I got to admit, I followed a certain area like everyone else did, but I saw soon that I don't need to be here. Everybody else is doing that. I need to go where nobody else is doing it. Well, that's back in the hood. That's where I need to go. because nobody's evangelizing them. You know, you don't sell books and tapes going into the hood. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't do it willingly at first. I think I was kind of needled into it, and then I realized, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, Lord, that's where I need to be, isn't it? This is, you made me to be there this way. Well, I get it. Okay. So that's why I'm doing what I do today, and that's why I do it preferably in the hood, because no one else is, and I can do this.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
If this show goes over a little bit of an hour, are you going to be mad at me, Jim?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Oh man,
Because-
the one time you say that, Chris isn't even here to hear it.
So you go to Roswell, and a lot of the times, as I've heard your testimony, you know, given in portions that in different places, and read some of it, a large part of this, other than your wife at the time, you really spent a lot of time of ministry alone, and which I can empathize with. Early on in my being awakened to a lot of truths that the modern church today still holds at a handoff, I spent many years alone, coming to understand and figuring out things just from the Bible, and like you, having a relationship with the Father, simply following him, doing what he said, holding on to what he told me. And in spite of friends and family telling me I was crazy, saying, you know what, I'm going to trust my Father, despite that. And I understand that hurt from friends and family because they don't understand you or why you're believing and doing what you're doing. So I get that. But you're in Roswell, and this conference comes to be, however it's come to be, and you find a guy. I know Dr. Michael Heiser was there, but the guy that I'm trying to get to here, David Flynn, what was it like to meet him and listen to that man for the first time, and then listen to him and be present when he gave those now famous presentations that are millions of views and copied and recopied all over YouTube and the internet now? What was it like to meet him for you?
Mark and Dave both being twins. I mean, they're identical twins, and believe me, their persona and everything is so similar. The thing that impressed me the most about David was not his intellect or his mind. I mean, that's impressive in alone. I mean, he was the first person on this planet that I had to actually say, Dave, slow down. Whoa, wait a minute. I'm having a hard time processing this. You're a quad core. I'm a dual core, man. Let's back up and let me, ingest a little bit of this.
Right.
Never had to do that with anybody else ever. And so, but it wasn't his intellect that was impressive. You know what impressed me the most about him?
Oh, I know what you're going to say, because it's evident in his brother too.
Yes.
But go ahead.
His humility.
Yep.
I had never met someone who is not so filled with themselves. He is the kind of guy that will go away from the 99 and stick with the one until they get it. He had such a humility about how he presented what he presented. He sometimes, after he spoke, he was actually, in the beginning, was a little afraid that he was going to get stoned or something, for some of the things he said. Instead, we're all blown away. We're going, wow. And for me, I knew of Dave in my early days when I was still fasting and praying and seeking these things out. Many of the things that he said was confirming what God was already showing me. So this was a great encouragement to me. So I had a little bit of starstruckness when I first met him. I'm finally getting to meet the guy that, has confirmed so much of what I'm doing. It's like, this is awesome that I can actually be friends with him. But can you imagine that after a couple of years of knowing him, he come up to me one time and he says, Dave, Jim, I don't have a pastor. I don't have a sounding board or anybody that I can come to. Would you be my pastor? Wow. Really? Yeah, I'd be honored to. And that's the kind of relationship we had. I didn't hang out with Dave. I didn't see him that often, but it's just like one of those bonds that even though you haven't, you can pick up. I'd see him once a year at least, at the Ancient of Days conferences. But I mean, we'd pick off just where we left off. Like we'd been just, bonded brothers. It's an awesome relationship that I had with Dave. And it's his humility.
Yeah.
Mike Heiser, the same. I have a relationship with him. I'm going to step out in a way. I've seen so many PhDs that seem to be so confident and self-reliant on their own intellectual abilities. But I have seen Mike leave the 99 and go after one and make sure that that one is taken care of until they understand everything that he can carry them possibly through. He is definitely one of the good guys that really has a heart for people. And that's what makes him such a good guy.
Well, I got to tell you, then my personal part of this, Jim, and I shared a little bit before, but I'm going to share it again. You know, and I'll share it with you personally. We'll get a chance to talk off air sometime, and I'll tell you my personal story, and we'll get you my book and all that. But
great.
Back in the fall of 2012, as I was telling you right before the show, was a time when the internet was finally better than it was when it first came about in the 56K modems. Because I had gone to search for information back when I first got the internet, and I had a 56K modem. But it was, of course, as you know, the websites fewer and far between. You couldn't go anywhere without changing a page and getting 20 more pop-ups, for advertising. Searching the waves then versus searching the wave of the internet now, they're not the same. And people who grew up in this area will have no idea what I'm talking about. But when I first went to search for information, it wasn't there. It wasn't coming. And so I spent many, many more years alone. It wasn't until the fall of 2012 that it had occurred to me again, you know what? The internet isn't what it was when I first started looking and poking around there to ask some of the questions I had. And that's when I ran across, of course, there's two feeds that came up that addressed the situation that I was talking about. The first one that came up was L.A. Marzulli, WordPress, where he did his blog. The second was David Flynn's website. But there was nobody talking with explanation about David. So I went to L.A. Marzulli, and I had totally forgot about David's. Watchers, anybody who's familiar with the Watchers website. So I went there and I was listening to LA, and here's LA talking about something that I had experienced personally, that my local church pastors, elders, deacons wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Here's someone like LA who addresses this, talking about it openly, and not only that, calling it for what it is and going to the scriptures and telling you. It was like, thankfully, affirmation other than the scripture that I wasn't off my rocker. Somebody else sees this as the same way I do. I'm not totally crazy or alone in this. And that led me then to the second website I had seen. Rose, had one of the members of the forum there when it was open dialogue and discussion, pointed me to his information. And that was like, a dam breaking onto cracked, dry desert ground when that information was shared. And I remember saying, I've got to talk to this guy. I've got to talk to him. And so I asked Rose, I said, well, how you told me he's got the website. Yeah. Okay. This is the website. When I got to a point where I wasn't just blown away, I asked Rose, I said, well, do you know how to get in touch with him? She said, and that's when she told me, well, I'm sorry to let you know that Dave passed away February this year. And I wept, man. It still brings me to tears. I was like, no, I'm too late. I can't talk to this man. I said, this just makes me sick. She goes, well, he has a twin brother, and same as you said, they're identical. Yes, they're individuals, but these guys are stamps. We can reach out to Mark. And so I was like, you're kidding me. And then I tried reaching out. I tried getting a hold of him, emailing, nothing. And then I found out he's publishing a book through Tom Horn's then, before it was the Skywatch TV book, and he's publishing this. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting this. And I read that, so on and so forth. And then I finally, I'm not going to go into the details, but I finally am able to talk. I get put in contact and I talk with Mark. And that's the whole reason I wanted to ask you about your experience, because I wanted to see how much it mirrored my own. When I got to talk to Mark, I had to jumpstart, poke myself, to respond when I finally got Mark on the phone and I'm able to talk to him, and he's talking to me in his voice, which I don't know how two people can have the same voice, but I understand identical twins, but their voices are even the same. And I'm like, I'm kicking myself, and I'm talking to Mark Flynn, but we've since become friends, and it's such a privilege to know that. But I can understand that, and I can understand your ministry, and I can understand how someone goes to do something that everybody else thinks they're crazy. I mean, I understand that aspect personally. You're having a lot of fruit from this. I mean, so you've told us about, people are coming in there to the museum. They're getting the biblical perspective on the event that everybody else is calling aliens and abductions. You're exposing that as just a repackaged form of what we saw happening way back in Genesis. These aren't aliens, they're angels. They've given themselves another name. What they're doing with men and women is no different than they've ever done. And, you're giving them the scriptures. How do you go from that ministry back to Michigan, and what are you doing now? And tell us about that. Because I want people to hear what you're doing today and to get the word out of what is coming about and how they can take part in helping you with this.
Well, because, so many things are like a two-edged sword. Ancient Aliens program has become so influential now. I mean, everybody is familiar with it and have seen at least one or two episodes of Ancient Aliens. Almost everybody. I mean, things have gone to the point where when we had a Left Behind series, and what's his name, the actor Nicolas Cage played in it, the secular version of it. There was a time when the idea of a rapture was only known by people that went to church. And even then it would be people that went to an evangelical type of church, either fundamentalist or Pentecostal. Now, everybody has some kind of an idea of a rapture because of the Nicolas Cage movie. I mean, so things can sound biblical-ish. I think like the, what's the one series? Tom Hanks played in that Angels and Demons or whatever.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
I mean, it was a total fabrication, totally made up, but it took on a life of its own because it sounded biblical-ish. And I think it was almost like an experiment to see the gullibility of people. And if you make something biblical-ish, that sounds good enough for most people, and they'll buy into, whatever crazy premise and conclusion you might have to it. So because of the whole Ancient Aliens thing, now these topics have been so popular, you can't turn the TV on, even the Travel Channel, without hearing something about they're traveling to, Roswell or to Area 51, or this has become more and more of a predominant mainstream topic that almost everybody is talking about. Now, some people are still embarrassed and won't have anything to do with UFOs, but privately, secretly, they all want to know something more about it because it's become such a topic that is current events now. It's not just something, that happened in some obscure thing. I mean, at one time, contactees and contact came on a lonely highway or out in the desert. One or two people saw it. Now, my God, they're closing down the Chicago airport. They're closing down the airport in China, where they had to literally stop all traffic because of massive sightings of UFOs. Or they're at an air show in Mexico in front of thousands of people, from all over the world that are there to see a celebration. and they're all witnessing these things. So it's becoming more and more of a public acceptance. Now we have the Navy coming out and actually addressing that. Okay, yes, some of these things were real, and it's more of a steps to disclosure. Now we know from a biblical perspective that whatever disclosure we get is not going to be the real truth. It's going to be part of the agenda, but that is coming. And because it's coming, now a museum like I had in Roswell can be put in any major city, and it's going to be, I think, able to, from a biblical perspective, be something that a lot of common people are going to be interested in. Now,
so tell us about this museum bookstore that you had then, and what you got going on now. So you're back in where you grew up, basically where you grew up in Michigan, and you're putting together a museum again. Tell us, what's the concept? What's the goal, the purpose? What's the ministry behind this? When I know people, we read your bio, what you do every day,
right.
helping broken lives. But this calling that you've had on your life early on isn't going away. What's this museum? How can we help? What does it do? What's going into it? All the details on that.
Okay, what I'm doing is it's a culmination of a lot of different experiences. Now, the problem that I had in the past, I think, is presenting something that's ominous, overwhelming, kind of doomy, kind of gloomy. How do you do it in a way that 3 different generations are going to be able to accept? How do you do it in a way that people from the occult, people from maybe secular UFO investigations, how are you going to get that much of a diversified audience into your place and captivate them, or hold them at least to consider a biblical perspective? How can you do that? Well, it's taken me 25 years, I think, to learn how to finally know how to do that, to have a broad appeal and do it in a way that, and broad appeal, I mean by generation, by culture, by just individuals, different backgrounds. Well, I think the Lord's shown me a way on how to do that. I have a museum that it's funny, it's humorous, but it doesn't make light, or let's say it's done in a way that it doesn't trivialize the importance of what's being said. But what it does is it gives, my premise is that the Bible has an answer for everything. Everything. It fills in the blanks. So many things that people are still wondering about in the secular, well, are they all friendly? Are some good? Are some bad? You have different organizations. One of them that's very big and popular on the internet now, I think it's called the Camelot organization or something. They're trying to say that okay, there's a hollow earth. There's a lot of different factions, though, some are different cabals, or different factions are working with different people for different reasons, and so there's all these different agendas going on. And I'm saying, you know what? It's simple. No, anything that's down there is a rebel. They're just using Adam Weishaupt's diversionary tactics. His idea, Adam Weishaupt, the head of the Illuminati, said, you know what? We're one agenda, one focus, one plan. But if we diversify into all these different isms and schisms, nobody's going to believe that it's just one globalist agenda. And you know what? He was successful at it. Mm-hmm. So they're doing almost the same thing. They're diversifying and trying to create this huge gray shaded area that doesn't exist. Everything down there is a rebel. And everything down there has a purpose and a plan, as one plan, one purpose, working with the God of this world. So the Bible can clarify that and fill in many gaps. There's controversy on the giants, of Genesis 6. Some people say, well, the sons of God were normal-sized people. They married the daughters of men, and they produced these giants. Okay, does the fossil record confirm that? No, it doesn't. Well, what I've done is sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. I've got a skeleton that's in that would represent the size of a 30-foot giant. Then I've got a skeleton that would represent a 15-foot giant. Then I've got a skeleton of a normal 6-foot human being. Now, just there, looking at the three, you have to look at it as evidence. What does the fossil record say? What does the any myths and legends and anything else that's consistent throughout, what are they telling us about this? And what is the hardcore evidence that we have? So we have some fossils, we have some skeletons that are fossils. They're fossils because they're pre-flood. They're the ones that died in the flood, and their remains are fossilized. Do you know that all of the fossils of the 30-foot giants, I mean, anything that's fossilized are only the 30-foot giants. All of the 15-foot are bleached bones or they're mummies, which means they're post-flood. Now, if that was true, that the fossil record then is the pre-flood, why is it, and this is a fact that can't be denied, why is it that all the fossils are adult males? There's no babies, there's no females, there's no adolescents, nothing in between, nothing but males, full adult males. So if normal-sized humans and normal-sized, the sons of God and the normal-sized humans produce this offspring, we should be expecting to see all the transitions of growth, male and female. We don't see that. Now, the other thing, all of the bleached bones, we have male, female, we have babies, we have children, we have some of them that are huddled together. We have legends and myths of the copper giants, especially in Michigan, in Ohio. My gosh, that is Grand Central Station for everything, I mean.
Reaching down here through Indiana, I mean, you can draw
a
curved line that goes straight down through Michigan, through Ohio. Yeah, you can draw a line because we have the mounds here, Mounds State Park, actually.
And sometimes the best way to find a mound and legitimacy is to, and I actually bought one. I bought one of the best white metal detectors you can find, and if you can have the different settings, you go the deepest depth you can, and then set it for copper. You locate copper, you find your giants. Right. Because most of them have been buried with copper, and there's several different reasons, possible reasons for that. But in all of them, again, and here's the one thing that nobody wants to tell you, and I'm not afraid to tell you, I'm not being a racist. Do you know that all the giants are Caucasians?
I hadn't thought about it, actually, but
they are all Caucasians. There's a reason for that. Cain was sentenced to wander from the face of God, to be hidden in the earth, inside the earth, after he killed Abel. Cain's descendants went inside the earth. Paradise, I mean, we can't get into it now, but I mean, if you look at all the circumstantial evidence, you look at Helena Blavatsky's whole idea of the Aryan race and the hidden masters and all this stuff, it all ties in perfectly. There's raw data that is consistent and real, but it's got a false premise and a false conclusion. But once you see that and can sort it out, the Bible can clearly tell you why we find what we find and what we are actually looking at. And so in the museum, I have very simple word pictures that make it all very clear based on evidence: who, what, when, where, and why, and how.
So this museum, what is going to be in this museum?
Well, when you first start out, I'm trying to show how we are literally, you have to know where we're at in order to know how to get back to where we actually belong. So the first thing you see on the very top, you have, you are here, and I show in the physical universe, there's a spiral galaxy. We're on the outer edge on one axis plane on this spiral galaxy. So here we are in the physical realm. But you are here also. And here we are in a parallel altered universe. Then I got the scripture, Ecclesiastes 3:15, that which is already been, and that which will be has already been, and God requires an account of that which is past. So the idea there is a parallel world literally exists, and we're stuck in the wrong one. Then it's also a world that is a matrix. It's not even real. Quantum physics is now decided or determined in many different ideas, but they all agree that, oh my gosh, we're in some kind of a computer program. This isn't even a real world. So then they're wondering, who's running the computer program? Oh, that's easy. The Bible says that the God of this world has a certain amount of limited authority to this realm that we consider our reality. It's a parallel altered world, but it's not even real. It's a computer program. So it goes into where we actually are so that we can understand where we need to be. And so one of the things, it gets into the interesting history of why the aliens don't contact us. If they're truly going to be beneficial to us, why don't they just land on the White House lawn and tell us who they are and what they're doing? Well, this goes through, you've heard of MK Ultra, mind control program. Okay, now, after World War II, the fall of the Reich, we brought Werner von Braun and all of the, paperclip scientists and research and technology and everything that we could grab from them over to our country.
Created NASA and the CIA, right?
Right. And so, so a lot of us that are familiar with that, we see that. What we don't realize, we took the very infrastructure of Nazi Germany into ourselves. We are playing out everything in the same but opposite role that was already predetermined. Now, here I'm going through in my book, and I get into all of the migratory patterns of different things, and it's all based on Isaiah 14th chapter, beginning at verses 28, I think it is, and it's under the context that the Philistines had just won a major war against Israel, and the primary group that they fought was the tribe of Dan, and they're gloating that they captured their god in a box, took them into their temple, Dagon's temple. Weird things happened. Long story short, they actually ended up calling the Jews back up and saying, will you guys come and pick up your god in a box and get him the heck out of here, because we don't like what's going on. But they were still boasting that, hey, we captured your god in a box. I mean, you guys couldn't even at one time touch this thing, and here we captured him and took him prisoner. So God sends Isaiah, a prophet, and says, hey, rejoice not, thou whole Palestina. For the root, and it goes into the, in the King James, it is actually the best rendering, but I mean, it goes into the idea of a fiery flying serpent and all this. I'm looking at it, I'm going, whoa, wait a minute, man, something genetics going on here. This is weird. So I looked at it, and I'm looking for my copy of my book, because I was going to maybe read an actual quote from it, if I can find it real quick, and if I can, I'll nix it. Anyways, in Isaiah 14th chapter, it's talking about this manipulation. So I looked up every word in the Hebrew, and it blew my mind what I read. Now, here's the unofficial Jim Wilhelmsen version. Now, it's the actual, it says, rejoice not, thou whole Palestina, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. Now, using all the variables, and even checking, sometimes I've been able to use Dr. Mike Heiser to back up my Hebrew. And a lot of times what he'll say is, okay, Jim, that's what it could say, but, and then he doesn't necessarily agree with my conclusions. I said, well, that's good enough, Mike. That's cool. At least I got my Hebrew. It's, if you say it possibly works, I'm good. I'm good to go. So here's what I had with this one. Rejoice not, all you Philistines, because the tribe of Israel, meaning Dan, that punished you is broken off, to pluck up from the serpent's soil an extrusion of offspring, shining ones, to cover with obscurity the serpent.
Shining ones.
Now, in my book, I go through all the migratory. Who are the modern day Philistines? Where did they go? Who are the modern day tribe of Dan? I get into Dan's whole thing. Didn't have to do that. Jesus simplified everything by word pictures. I love this. So I've got this in the museum. I take something that's very complicated and make it very simple, very visual. This is what he's saying. Understand what the symbol of the tribe of Dan was. It was the eagle. Do you know what the symbol of the Philistine was? It was a swastika. Now, word pictures. He's saying that in the latter days, the tribe of Dan will come together with the Philistines. And when they come together, this is the activity that is going to be taking place within their kingdom. My gosh, it's the eagle and the swastika, the Third Reich. And what genetic experiments what they were doing based on Helena Blavatsky's pure Aryan. This whole myth is not a myth. This is when we see these two come together, the Nazi Empire, they're going to manipulate human genes. They're going to actually think they can alter space and time based on Daniel 2nd chapter and 8th chapter. Man, it's there. This is exactly what their agenda was. They're doing everything the same but opposite. To make a, God tells the Jews in Psalms, he says, those, let's see, they have eyes, but they see not. They have ears, but they see not. Those that make them that are like them. He's talking about making idols of, gold and silver and everything.
Right.
So think about it in the same but opposite. If you make an idol that can be worshipped, that's alive and talks and speaks, then you are just as alive as they are. So the whole agenda of the Nazi Empire with the eagle and the swastika to genetically manipulate everything to be the firstborn of your own kind. So you're making a living idol that is worshipped. What it exactly says in the 13th chapter of Revelation. That there would be an idol be made and it would be worshipped. So we're seeing a whole different way of seeing prophecy and seeing how it's being fulfilled. So it even includes the idea of the crossing over the Euphrates River for 200 million Chinese is what it's been taught in the past, to cross the Euphrates River that does the final battle. But the Euphrates River, there's never been 4 rivers found on the surface of the earth. When we realize that paradise is inside the earth and Eden is east or in this area, a certain area was called the land of Nod, east of Eden, and these kings of the east come up out of the earth in the locust invasion. There's 4 ocean currents. There was a book written back in the 1890s by a guy, I got this from Arctos, the Nazi myth of survival or whatever, and this guy was an occult scholar, and he wrote, didn't even necessarily believe that the escape of the Nazis to a base 211 in the Antarctic had any, relative belief, but he was looking at it just as an objective researcher. Okay, here's what we find. This is what the possible connections could be. So maybe there's some things. Well, he quoted this guy that wrote a book. He was a biblical scholar, a theologian back in the 1880s and 90s. He wrote a book called Cosmic Problems Solved. And basically what he was saying is, look, there's 2 openings to a hollow earth. One is at the North Pole, one is at the South Pole. The 4 ocean currents literally go inside the earth, go around, and then come back out at the bottom, which is called the pit. Helena Blavatsky even called it the pit. And so these ocean currents are actually the 4 rivers of Eden. He says it's inside the earth, influencing the outside of the earth. So I tried to get a hold of this book, couldn't find it anywhere. One of my friends, a researcher friend, he's like a hunter that just doesn't quit. He found the only existing copy was at the New York Library. I got it on PDF file. I read it. I was amazed. There it is, the evidence. The river that dries up, literally in the Hebrew, it's talking that it's floodwaters that melt. The Euphrates has nothing to do with that river over in the Middle East. It has to do with the ocean currents that are flowing out. And you know what? One of them has slowed down and it's causing the Antarctic ice to melt. Pyramids are showing. All kinds of stuff is showing. So all of a sudden, everybody of the rich elite on this earth are interested in going down to do it. Feed penguins. If you remember about 4 years ago, Obama went down there. The head of the Greek Orthodox Church, Putin.
They're all wanting to go down there and see what's going on all of a sudden.
Well, and the thing is that all of this stuff is frozen in fresh water. It's not salt water. There's no corrosion. There's no corruption. So whatever these things are, dry them out, push a button, they're fully operable.
Mm-hmm.
And this technology that existed before the flood surpasses what we have now. We're just only discovering some of these connections. We're finding beds of mercury, rivers, and beds underneath all the pyramids. That had to do with a Wi-Fi system. That had to do with a whole lot more than what we're just beginning to understand. So there's a lot of things happening prophetically in totally different areas that most mainstream Christianity isn't even looking at.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that they think have already passed and done many, many years ago.
So this museum is basically providing, it's going to be an information location. People can come and look at the information.
Yes.
And then, at least they have, present the facts, and then, people may come to different conclusions or whatever, but at least they're going to be presented with information that they're not going to get anywhere else. You're going to have books there as well, I presume.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, I have a library. That's why I would like to get, not just one book, maybe a few books. What I'm doing is I'm getting a library that people can check out, either sci-fi movies that are totally relatable to, to the topic that I just explained to them, or some of my own tapes, or some of your books, my books, all of our books collectively. I don't want this just to be about Jim Wilhelmsen and what he's got. I want it to be all of us have pieces to the puzzle. Not one person has the total answer. But I think working together in unity like this, we can glean everybody's little piece and let the Holy Spirit, through all of our works, give a better enhanced whole picture to people. I think very soon, very, very soon, this is going to be a need. I think there's a reset. We never talked about any of this, so I'm on unknown territory with you guys, but I totally believe in Mark Taylor's calling, ministry, prophecies that he's had to say about Trump, about talking about a reset. This world has gone way out of control. And I think we're going to see a reset. And I think this reset is going to destroy any gray shaded areas. You're either going to be on one side or the other side. And I think Peter explains that in his epistle. There's going to be a time when you're either on one side or the other side. There's going to be no gray shaded area. You're either a wheat or a tare. You're a goat or a sheep. And it's going to be known by the decisions you make and the sides that you side up on. So I think we're about to be coming to that time. We are, as a church, we are so divided. My gosh, there's some people that think Trump is the Antichrist. There's some people that think Trump is sent of God. Well, time is going to tell. I'm straddling the fence purposely right here, right now, I think, because we have to all have that same loose-endedness with prophecy. Right about the time we think we've got everything all figured out and we can pull out a little pamphlet and here's here, here's here. We don't have anything figured out. Our dependency has to be on our day-to-day relationship with Christ personally. That's our only safety. Anything else, man, at the time that we start having more confidence in events or assumed events, then we're going to make the same mistake the Jews made. My gosh, they're sitting there looking at Jesus saying, well, we know when Messiah comes, he's going to do this, this, and this, and this. Dude, get rid of your dogma. Look in the eyes of this person. He is everything you've ever needed or wanted. He is the fulfillment of all things. We could do the same mistake. We have to know him intimately, not about him. And so that's where our safety is. So the way I present this is humorous, because these are scary, ominous things, but my main theme is, hey, God's in control. Don't worry, everything is okay. So you can check out books, you can check out videos, and you guys, if you have videos on your stuff, that, the more media that I can have, the more I can afford people.
How do people get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of you to contribute to this, reach out, and then actually go there? So tell us that information, and we'll call this a night tonight.
Okay.
We'll have to have you on again, maybe at another time.
Well, I had my YouTube channel with 134 videos removed for hate speech. All of the videos that they specifically had a problem with were all the ones about Adolf Hitler. Mm-hmm. Now, somebody had once advised me, said, well, Jim, it's just an algorithm. They see Hitler and they are associating automatically that it's, hate speech because he was such a hateful guy. I said, okay, well, in that case, I'll go through their procedure then for them to analyze it further, and they'll see, what it is, and maybe I'll get my channel back. I went through the process. You know what? They said, no, your stuff is violent. It's children shouldn't be exposed to it. I said, well, I can adjust it. No, we've concluded that it is hate speech. Oh, so I'm picking on Hitler because I'm saying that he's the worst person that ever existed, that he was the firstborn of his kind, just as Jesus was the firstborn of his kind. And so he's fulfilled all these prophecies, and I'm picking on him? Gosh, bad me. I'm picking on poor misunderstood Hitler. It's just amazing how hypocritical they can do.
You have an email?
Yeah, yes. So it's awitness41@aol.com. Now I'm working on getting my videos reinstalled on there, but the best way, through Skype, I can send them to everybody 10 at a time, because all I'm asking is this. I believe we're at the end of the end. I want this stuff out ballistic. I haven't got time to make a bunch of DVDs or anything. So I have on my front page of my website, echoesofenoch.com. That's ECHOESOFENOCH.com. You go there. You can sign up for a $5 a month PayPal for a year, just $5 a month. You sign up as a $5 a month member. I will give you all of my videos free through Skype. You give me your Skype name. I can transfer them 10 at a time. As soon as you upload them, the thing is free. I can load 10 more. Right now, I've got about 40 available, which is about, I don't know how many hundreds of hours, of watching. I mean, that's good enough. All you have to do is promise me that you won't resell them, but that you'll give them away free. There's no copyright on any of this stuff. You give them away to friends, enemies, everybody in between. Give them away free as a gift. Use them as like tracks. If you can do that, you can have everything that I have. This is the best way for me to get the word out. I didn't do this for money. I did this to get it out. Time's running short. We need to get this stuff out so that people can be armed and equipped with what the coming deception and delusion and disclosure is going to be.
Well, Jim, I certainly do appreciate you coming on the show. It's been this is one of the bucket list items for me personally, getting to talk to you one-on-one like this. It's kind of a selfish thing, but I justify that because I'm having the conversation and everybody else gets to join in with us. So, maybe it is selfish, but hopefully the body is going to be blessed by it, not just me. But we'll be in contact again soon. I'm going to get you some of my books, and maybe this next year, some way I can figure out how to get up there and see you and love you in person and see this museum for myself. And we'll just continue to see how we can support each other. Like you said, this body, this body is so diverse, and we have so many different parts. And as you said, there's so many of us that maybe we see things differently. But as I've said, and I will continue to say over and over on this show, if we just first listen to someone, what they had to say, love them as we're commanded to do in
Amen.
Christ, be a friend to them and serve them first. You and I, we can work out our differences one-on-one together and have at least an opportunity to talk and sharpen each other on the pieces that we have. But you'll never get that opportunity if you don't love someone first. If you don't talk to someone who knows that they would lay down their lives for you, you're wasting your time. And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing, just beating each other over the head with our swords, through social media, instead of first sacrificing ourselves for them. If somebody sacrifices themselves for you, that's a little bit different. Jim, I love you, brother. I'm thankful you came on the show. We'll be talking again soon. Everybody, go to his website. You want to reach out. His information is in the description of this show here on YouTube for as long as this channel is laying out. Go to Echoes of Enoch, reach out to him, get those videos. You can email him as well. But if you're so led or in his area, stop by and say hi to Jim. Give him a hug. Check out what he's doing, and maybe that's something that you can take part in if you're local there. Maybe you found a way and somebody you can help out and do ministry. You just never know. Jim's been at it for a while. This has been Disputed Lands. This is Take on the World TV. I am Chad Schaefer. My silent partner, who I never got a chance to tuck over there, is Ian the Duck. And thank you for watching Take on the World TV. Until we see you the next time. Shalom.